Okay, let's dive in. Welcome back, everyone. Today, we are taking a really deep look at something fundamental, something quiet but incredibly powerful inside you. It's your body's own unconscious defense system,
That's right.
this sort of hidden neural radar that's always scanning your environment. Is it safe? Is it dangerous? And this whole process has a name, neuroception.
Exactly. And, for a lot of people listening, maybe especially if you've gone through things that were overwhelming or unpredictable, maybe traumatic, well, this internal radar, this neuroceptive system, it often gets fundamentally miscalibrated.
Miscalibrated.
It gets stuck, like stuck on high alert permanently. So it starts misinterpreting things that are actually neutral or benign or even totally safe.
Yeah.
It reads them as immediate threats.
Which leads to that feeling of chronic anxiety, maybe wanting to withdraw.
Precisely. That constant background hum of unease or outright fear.
So our mission today isn't just to put a label on this, right? We want to provide more of a blueprint.
Yeah, roadmap.
We need to understand the, frankly, incredibly sophisticated neurophysiology behind it all. Why does it malfunction, especially after trauma? And, maybe most importantly, what are the actual actionable pathways to help your body relearn how to assess the environment accurately?
So you can finally feel safe. Truly feel safe and grounded.
And for this, we're drawing on some really solid sources.
We are. We're leaning heavily on the neurophysiological work of Dr. Stephen Porges, particularly his polyvagal theory. But we're also weaving in clinical insights from somatic healing, from trauma resolution work.
Because this isn't just abstract theory, is it?
Not at all. This is the literal mechanism by which you experience comfort, connection, or, well, the lack of it in your daily life. It's deeply practical. Hashtag tag one. The neurophysiological architecture of safety and danger.
Okay, so to start, let's ground ourselves in the biology. I mean, when we talk about these automatic defense systems, we really have to look way back, evolutionarily speaking.
Absolutely. You have to recognize this deep biological foundation we share with, well, basically all mammals. We're talking about the really instinctual, involuntary parts of the nervous system, mostly subcortical.
Below conscious thought.
Way below. And these defensive systems, the ones triggered by perceived threats, they're virtually identical across countless species. They just operate without your conscious permission. That's why they're so powerful and sometimes so problematic when they misfire.
We often hear about the triune brain model, the idea of these evolutionary layers. Can you walk us through how the oldest parts of that system get kind of hijacked when neuroception goes wrong?
Sure. So in that model, you've got the reptilian brain right at the base, basic survival instinct. Then the mammalian or limbic brain, that's more emotions, bonding, memory. And then the newest layer, the neocortex, for rational thought, language, planning.
Our thinking brain.
Right. But when a serious threat is perceived, or even just neuroceived, the older systems completely take charge. The neocortex kind of goes offline.
And resources get shifted.
Massively. Think about it. Your body has this incredibly complex job of distributing resources, energy, oxygen, everything. Normally, it balances internal needs, like digestion and rest, with external demands. But perceive a threat. Instantly, the priority shifts. All resources flood towards external defensive needs. Mobilization, fight or flight.
Or freeze.
Or freeze, yes.
Yeah.
Internal homeostatic needs, like rest and digest, they get put on hold. There just isn't enough capacity to do both when survival feels like it's on the line.
And that instant shift, that decision, mobilize or shut down, this is really what Porges formalized with polyvagal theory, isn't it? It's not just a simple fight or flight. It's more nuanced.
Much more nuanced. It's a sophisticated hierarchy. Porges describes 3 distinct biobehavioral strategies, or layers, that our autonomic nervous system uses, one after the other, depending on the perceived level of safety or danger.
Phylogenetically ordered, meaning based on evolutionary development.
Exactly. Each layer uses specialized neural circuits designed to maximize our chances of survival in different kinds of challenging situations.
Okay, so layer 1, the newest, most evolved strategy.
That's our state of safety and social engagement. This is mediated by the myelinated vagus nerve, what Porges calls the ventral vagal complex. This is our preferred state. It's where we connect, learn, grow, heal. It's our safe and social mode.
But if the environment doesn't feel safe, if cues of danger appear,
then we drop down the ladder. Level 2 kicks in.
Which is the sympathetic activation, fight or flight.
Exactly. Mobilization. Governed by the sympathetic nervous system. This gets us ready to actively engage with the danger, run away, fight back. We feel that surge of adrenaline, maybe anger, maybe panic. We need to move.
And this uses parts of the older unmyelinated vagus too.
Well, it's primarily sympathetic, but it represents a step down from that sophisticated myelinated vagal control.
Hmm.
Now, if that response, fight or flight, if it feels like it won't work or if the threat feels inescapable,
Then we drop even further?
down to the oldest, most primitive layer, level 3, the shutdown, the collapse,
The freeze response.
the dorsal vagal shutdown. This is mediated by the really ancient unmyelinated part of the vagus nerve. It's an involuntary immobilization. Think dissociation, feeling numb, maybe even fainting. Heart rate plummets, metabolism slows way down. It's a conservation strategy like playing dead, essentially.
Wow. And the key insight from Porges is that our system doesn't jump straight to fight or flight, does it?
No, that's crucial. It tries connection and safety first. It's scanning for cues that allow it to stay in that ventral vagal socially engaged state. Only when those safety cues are absent or danger cues are overwhelming does it reluctantly drop down that hierarchy. Defense is metabolically expensive.
That safety first mechanism, that's the social engagement system or SES, what makes this myelinated vagus, this newer system, so critical specifically for mammals like us?
It's a massive evolutionary advantage. The myelinated vagus lets us do two really important things that older reptiles, for example, can't really do in the same way.
Okay, what are they?
First, it actively inhibits those older defensive circuits in the limbic system, the circuits driving intense fear and rage. It put the brakes on them, essentially.
So it helps keep us calm.
It helps keep us calm enough to do the second thing, which is crucial. Establish social bonds. It allows for co-regulation. It's the physiological underpinning of seeking comfort from another person, feeling safe in their presence, communicating subtly through expression and tone of voice.
Right. And the SES isn't just about controlling the heart and breath, is it? It's a whole package deal focused on connection.
It's a completely integrated system. Think about what's involved. The neural structures that control the muscles of your face and head, like opening your eyelids to make eye contact, to visually scan for safety cues, facial expressions showing warmth, concern, understanding, chewing, swallowing relaxed functions, vocalization, the tone and rhythm of your voice, making it sound engaging and safe, not monotone or sharp. Even selective listening, tuning out background noise to focus on a human voice. Head turning for social gestures, orienting towards someone.
So if my SES is online, I look approachable, I sound calm, I can focus on the conversation.
Exactly. Your face is mobile and expressive. Your voice has prosody, that musical quality. You can filter out distractions.
Yeah.
But if your SES starts to go offline because your neuroception picks up subtle cues of risk,
And then what happens?
your face might tighten, become mask-like, your voice might flatten. Suddenly, that air conditioner noise you didn't notice before becomes incredibly distracting, overwhelming. You might struggle to make eye contact.
So if I find myself unable to filter out background noise in a meeting, that's a sign my nervous system has already unconsciously started to pull back from that safe and social state.
It's a very common sign, yes. Your system has subtly shifted down the polyvagal ladder. The social engagement system has lost some of its influence.
And the mechanism that allows us to stay calm or manages this shifting is what Porges calls the vagal brake.
The vagal brake, exactly. Think of it like the brakes on your car, but for your heart rate and arousal level. It's an active inhibitory neural system. When engaged, it slows the heart rate, lowers blood pressure, reduces overall physiological arousal. It actively promotes those calm states needed for health, growth, bonding, what Porges might call level 2 processes, the background support for the SES.
And this isn't just about feeling calm in the moment. It's crucial for development too, right? The sources mention studies with children.
That research is really telling. A child's ability to appropriately regulate this vagal brake, to apply it when needed, to stay calm during a challenge, and release it when mobilization is needed, that capacity is strongly linked to better behavioral outcomes.
Fewer problems later on.
Exactly. Kids with better RSA flexibility, respiratory sinus arrhythmia, which measures vagal activity, tend to show less social withdrawal, fewer depressive symptoms, less aggression as they grow. It really highlights how fundamental this physiological self-regulation is for emotional and social well-being. It starts right down at the level of the nervous system's ability to manage arousal.
Okay, before we move fully into neuroception itself, there was that interesting detail about anatomical asymmetry, the right hemisphere connection. Why is that relevant for someone trying to understand their own responses?
Ah, yes. This connects our emotional experience directly to this vagal regulation.
Huh.
So the neural control of the vagus nerve is ipsilateral, meaning same side. The left vagus originates from the left brainstem, the right vagus from the right brainstem.
Okay.
Now, the key thing is that the right hemisphere of the brain, which is heavily involved in processing emotions,
Yeah.
especially intense ones, nonverbal cues, spatial awareness, that kind of holistic processing,
Yeah.
the right hemisphere seems to play a dominant role in the efficient regulation of our autonomic function, particularly through those brainstem nuclei that control the vagus.
Wait, hang on. So the part of my brain dealing with strong feelings, like fear or maybe deep empathy, has a direct line, a more powerful line, to the brake controlling my heart rate and calm state.
That seems to be the case. For instance, there's evidence suggesting the right central nucleus of the amygdala, a major hub for fear and emotional processing, has strong regulatory influence over the right nucleus ambiguous, which is a key source for the myelinated vagus, the vagal brake.
So if my right hemisphere is firing off distress signals, maybe triggered by reading someone's facial expression as angry, even subtly,
Then that emotional processing can have a very direct and powerful impact on lifting that vagal brake.
Yeah.
Your heart rate might jump, your breathing might quicken almost instantaneously.
which explains why it's so hard to think clearly or feel calm when we're flooded with emotion. The emotional brain literally overrides the calming system.
It provides a direct physiological pathway for that experience. The right hemisphere's emotional assessment can rapidly shift your autonomic state, pulling you out of that ventral vagal safety zone.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And it sets the stage beautifully for neuroception itself. If the vagal brake is lifting because of these signals, what's actually doing the scanning for those signals in the first place?
And that is neuroception. This is the core concept. Your nervous system is constantly, relentlessly evaluating cues. Cues in the environment, cues from inside your own body, cues from the interactions you're having. Are things safe? Is there risk? Is there a life threat?
And it's like an unconscious radar system.
Exactly. Operating continuously, far below the level of conscious thought. It's running these incredibly complex calculations all the time, sorting cues into safe, dangerous, or life-threatening.
And this is the point we absolutely need to hammer home. Neuroception is not conscious perception. It's not thinking.
Absolutely critical distinction.
Yeah.
You might consciously look around a room and think everything looks fine here. You might see a friend smiling and consciously interpret that as friendly. But your neuroception, operating through these older subcortical systems, might pick up something else entirely. Maybe a subtle tension in their facial muscles, a slight shift in their vocal tone, maybe even the acoustics of the room feel vaguely unsettling based on past experience, and boom.
Before you even consciously register it.
Way before. Your nervous system detects that subtle cue, and instantly your physiology starts to shift. You begin moving down that polyvagal ladder into a defensive state. Maybe subtle sympathetic activation, maybe even a hint of freeze. It's like an instantaneous tripwire, completely bypassing conscious analysis.
So my perception of threat, or even just an assumed threat, something my nervous system flags based on past data, even if it's not objectively dangerous right now, that alone is enough to trigger this huge physiological shift.
Absolutely. A massive withdrawal of that calming parasympathetic tone from the myelinated vagus and a reciprocal jump in sympathetic tone preparing you for defense.
And doesn't matter if the threat is, say, just a particular tone of voice on a phone call.
Doesn't matter at all. The objective safety of your chair, your room, irrelevant. If your neuroception flags danger based on that tone, your body instantly reacts as if the chair were dangerous. Resources immediately shift. That internal INS trade-off kicks in. Forget about digesting lunch. We need to mobilize now. Internal needs yield to perceived external demand.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about the neurochemistry that links this state to our social behavior. Oxytocin comes up a lot. It's often called the cuddle hormone or love hormone, but its role seems much more tied into this safety system.
It's incredibly important, yes, and much more nuanced than just cuddling. Centrally released oxytocin, meaning within the brain, seems to be one of the primary ways our body actively counters those defensive strategies triggered by stress and perceived danger.
How does it do that?
Well, it appears to be neuroprotective, and it strongly facilitates social behavior, making us more open to connection. But how it works ties back to the main stress system, the HPA axis.
The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the body's big red alarm button.
Right. When danger is perceived, the hypothalamus releases CRH, corticotropin releasing factor. That starts the cascade. Pituitary releases ACTH, adrenals pump out cortisol, the stress hormone.
Standard stress response.
Standard stress response. Now, oxytocin seems to act as a kind of dampener on that system. Research suggests it can inhibit the central effects of both vasopressin, another hormone linked to stress and sometimes aggression, and CRH itself.
So it literally tells the HPA axis, stand down, false alarm.
It seems to contribute to that signal, yes. It's essentially saying it's safe enough to lower the defenses. It's safe enough to connect. It helps shift us back towards that ventral vagal state.
So it's not just about feeling good. It actively pushes back against the neurochemistry of fear and mobilization.
That appears to be a key function. But like everything in biology, it's complex. The type of stressor matters. For example, even mild stress, like just being handled in lab studies, can increase vasopressin.
Which is more associated with stress or defensiveness.
Right. And really intense stressors might actually trigger the release of both oxytocin and vasopressin, which complicates the picture. It's not always a simple on-off switch.
But the overall tendency is that oxytocin supports safety and connection. There is that fascinating finding about infant exposure mentioned in the sources.
Yes, that's quite striking. Studies indicate that even brief exposure to an infant can trigger oxytocin release in adults and, importantly, can concurrently block stress-induced increases in adrenal steroids like cortisol.
Wow.
It really supports the idea that a primary role of oxytocin is managing physiological stress while facilitating social bonding and engagement. It helps reinforce that social engagement system, helping us learn and maintain that feeling of safety associated with the ventral vagal state. So you could say that neuroception is fundamentally scanning for cues that allow that calming, connecting oxytocin to flow.
Which brings us right to the heart of the problem for so many people. When the system experiences something truly overwhelming, something traumatic, that neuroception gets stuck. It gets profoundly miscalibrated by the past. And the sources offer this really powerful insight. Post-traumatic symptoms aren't just bad memories. They're described as fundamentally incomplete physiological responses suspended in fear.
That is the paradigm shift in understanding trauma, I think. Trauma isn't primarily about the event itself. It's about what happens inside your nervous system, inside your body, when you don't get to complete the natural biological defensive response.
So an event happens and it creates this unresolved impact.
Exactly. Your body generates this immense surge of survival energy. Metabolic fuel, to fight, to flee, to protect yourself. But what happens if that action gets thwarted? If you're pinned down, if you freeze, if you're forced to suppress the impulse?
The energy has nowhere to go.
It has nowhere to go. It doesn't just vanish. Think of it like compressing a powerful spring and then locking it in place. That potential energy is still there, trapped inside the system.
So that near-miss car accident example. My body instantly prepared to slam the brakes, maybe swerve, maybe yell, but maybe it happened too fast, or maybe I was a passenger and couldn't act. That energy.
It's stuck. It's rechanneled, essentially.
Yeah.
And the nervous system, now terrified of the sheer power of this undischarged energy, starts working overtime to contain it, to keep it locked down.
And that contained energy is what manifests as the symptoms we associate with PTSD.
That's the core idea from somatic perspectives. The chronic fear, the intrusive images or flashbacks, the hypervigilance, the rage, maybe deep shame. These aren't just psychological constructs. They are viewed as the container the organism creates to manage and hold that volatile, undischarged residual energy from the original defensive impulse.
Whoa. So the anxiety, the flashback, it's actually the corral keeping the original survival energy penned in.
In this model, yes. It's a way of binding that overwhelming energy.
Okay, wait. If the symptom is just the container, does that imply that therapies focusing only on changing the thoughts or processing the memory might miss the mark if they don't address the underlying physiological charge?
That's a critical implication, and why somatic approaches are often so effective. Talk therapy is incredibly valuable for making meaning, building narrative coherence, understanding patterns, feeling heard. But if the root issue is trapped physiological energy, then the resolution often needs to be physiological too.
Like animals in the wild.
Exactly. You watch a gazelle escape a lion. What does it do afterwards? It doesn't just wander off. It often shakes violently, trembles, takes deep breaths. It physically discharges that massive surge of survival energy,
Completing the cycle.
completing the physiological cycle.
Yeah.
And because they do that, they rarely seem to develop the chronic symptoms we see in traumatized humans. We humans, often due to social conditioning, embarrassment, or just the sheer overwhelm, tend to inhibit that discharge. We tense up against the shaking. We hold our breath.
And that inhibition leads directly to that constricted way of living we often see after trauma, the avoidance behaviors.
Absolutely. It's the nervous system trying desperately to keep that lid on the compressed spring. If certain situations, people, or even internal sensations threaten to jostle that container and release the stored energy,
The system pulls back. Avoids them.
Exactly. Life starts to shrink. You stop driving after the accident.
Yeah.
You avoid crowds. Maybe intimacy feels too activating, brings up flashbacks. The avoidance is an attempt, usually unconscious, to keep that underlying arousal contained.
And the tragedy is that the very energy needed for discharge, that life force mobilized for survival, gets tangled up with the terrifying feelings of fear or rage that form the container.
Precisely. So the idea of releasing the energy, of letting the tremor happen, of feeling the heat or the impulse to push away, it can feel incredibly threatening, intolerable even. It feels like letting the monster out of the cage. So we suppress the very thing that could lead to resolution because the cure temporarily feels like the original danger.
This complexity really underlines that point from the neuropsychologist Alexander Luria about needing more than just a mechanistic view of the brain when dealing with these issues.
Luria's insight was profound. He argued that studying neurological conditions that deeply affect a person's sense of self, their lived experience, requires what he called a personalistic or even romantic science. We can't just treat the brain like a faulty machine.
If we just focus on the mechanics, the cognitive processes, and ignore the feeling, the judging, the subjective reality,
We lose touch with the concrete reality of the person's experience. We become, as he put it, computer-like, missing the richness and the suffering. We need to understand the person within the neurological context.
and this connects to the ultimate malfunction of neuroception in severe trauma, doesn't it? It's not just that the radar is faulty. Sometimes it seems like the very idea of safety gets damaged or even lost.
Exactly. Think about conditions like visual agnosia, which Luria also studied. Patients with certain brain damage don't just lose the ability to recognize an object. They might lose the very concept or idea of seeing, or the idea of a face.
They're not blind, but the meaning is gone.
The subjective reality of seeing is fractured. Similarly, severe trauma can sometimes damage those core perceptive functions necessary for assessing safety. It's like the idea of safety, the internal felt sense of it, gets erased or becomes inaccessible.
So the neuroceptive system isn't just misinterpreting cues. It might lack the fundamental baseline of what safe even feels like anymore.
And restoring that requires more than just changing thoughts. It requires consistent, embodied experiences of safety. It needs ongoing external stimulation, relational safety, somatic work activities that help rebuild that subjective reality, proving to the deepest layers of the nervous system that safety is possible again. The body has to be painstakingly convinced. #4. Strategies for healing and restoring accurate neuroception.
Okay, so if the core problem is physiological, this trapped energy, this miscalibrated neuroception, maybe even a damaged sense of safety, how do we start to heal? The sources seem unified on one point. Repeatedly dredging up the traumatic story itself isn't the primary path.
No, it often isn't. In fact, just retelling the story, especially with that awareness of the body, can simply reactivate the trauma response, re-traumatizing the system. It can interfere with the body's own innate intelligence, its inherent capacity to heal itself.
So what's the alternative? Where do we put our focus?
The key, according to somatic approaches, lies in shifting attention inwards, prioritizing somatic awareness, turning into the direct physical sensations in your body, moment by moment, working with what Peter Levine calls the felt sense.
The felt sense. Can you unpack that a bit? For someone who lives mostly in their head, tuning into body sensation can sound, well, vague. Or maybe even scary if the body feels like a dangerous place.
It can feel very foreign, absolutely. The felt sense is the raw data stream from your nervous system before you layer labels or interpretations onto it. It's things like heat, coolness, tingling, vibration, buzzing, pressure, tightness, openness, expansion, contraction, a sense of flow or stuckness.
So instead of saying, I feel anxious, I'd try to notice what?
You try to notice the physical components of that experience. Where is it in your body? Is it a tightness in the chest? A knot in the stomach? Does it have a temperature, a texture? Does it feel like it's moving or still? The invitation is to get curious about the raw sensation itself, without judging it or needing it to go away immediately.
And the crucial part is that these sensations aren't static.
That's the magic. Sensations, when you bring gentle, curious awareness to them, almost always begin to shift and change. That tightness might morph into warmth, or it might move or dissolve, or an image might arise, or a different feeling. The goal is simply to notice and track these transformations, allowing the energy that was locked in the sensation to begin moving again towards resolution and flow.
It sounds like this requires a very different sense of timing. We have to slow way down and really honor the body's own pace, its biological rhythms.
Absolutely fundamental. Physiological processes happen in cycles. Think about breathing, digestion, sleep, they all have rhythms. Healing trauma in the body also follows natural, often slow biological rhythms. If you start tracking a sensation, maybe a tremor starts in your legs, you have to have the patience to stay with it, allow it to complete its course.
Which might take how long?
Sometimes just a few minutes. But in our fast-paced, quick-fix modern lives, a few minutes of just being with an uncomfortable sensation can feel like an eternity. We want to rush it, fix it, or make it stop. But you can't rush the river. Trying to force the process or skip steps usually just makes the system clamp down again, back into constriction. Patience is key.
There was that really powerful example in the source material of the story of Joe, who was dealing with the aftermath of a car accident.
Yes, Joe's case illustrates this perfectly.
Yeah.
He had chronic pain, anxiety, and it turned out his system was still holding the incomplete impulses from the moment of the near miss.
What impulses?
The impulse to turn the steering wheel hard to avoid the collision. The impulse to physically brace and pull his body back. Even the impulse maybe to shout or talk to his wife who was with him. These were actions his nervous system prepared for, generated energy for, but couldn't fully execute or complete in the split second of the event.
So the energy for those actions was still stuck.
Exactly. And the therapeutic approach wasn't about reliving the fear, but about gently, safely encouraging his body to find and complete those thwarted movements now in the present. Focusing on the sensation in his arms as he imagined turning the wheel, noticing the muscles wanting to contract as he felt the impulse to pull back.
Focusing on the movement, the sensation, not the danger.
Right. Allowing the body to finally do what it needed to do then.
And what happened when he allowed that?
It was profound. As he mindfully completed these micro-movements, he started to release that stored energy. He broke into a sweat. His body began to tremble deeply, a classic discharge sign. And afterwards, he reported feeling, maybe for the first time since the accident, truly peaceful and safe.
The completion discharged the stored energy.
Yes, it allowed the internal constricted image or memory of the event to finally expand and resolve. It sent a powerful signal to his neuroception. The danger is over. The protective action has been taken. You can stand down now. Completion is the language the oldest parts of the nervous system understand.
That idea, completing the action the body intended, feels like the absolute core mechanism for recalibrating that neuroceptive radar at the deepest level.
It really is. And notice how this physiological discharge naturally connects with psychological models too, like internal family systems or IFS.
How so?
Well, in IFS terms, when trauma happens, different parts of us step up to protect the system. These parts might become extreme, like a panic part or a hypervigilant part or a numbing part. They often blend with us, meaning we feel like we are that part, because they don't trust the core self, our innate, calm, compassionate center, to handle the overwhelming situation. They take on these extreme, often exhausting protective roles.
They become parentified, trying to manage everything.
Exactly. Now, when someone like Joe completes that physiological impulse and his body starts to register genuine safety, what happens to those protective parts?
They can relax.
They can begin to relax, yes. The core self becomes more present, more embodied. It starts to feel safe and capable again. And as the self demonstrates competence and compassion, those protective parts can start to trust it. They realize they don't have to be in extreme roles 24/7. They can unblend, step back a bit, and allow the self to lead. The inner system finds balance.
This really speaks to the importance of self-compassion and healing, doesn't it? Which sometimes gets mistaken for being passive or weak.
Hugely important. And we need to be clear, especially Kristen Neff talks about fierce self-compassion. This isn't about being a doormat. It's about courage. It's the protective, action-oriented side of compassion.
Like what?
It's the strength to set boundaries, to say no to harm, whether from others or from our own inner critic, to stand up for our needs, to motivate ourselves to make difficult changes. It provides a kind of compassionate armor. It's about harnessing that protective energy in a constructive, self-led way. An embodied, courageous self is perhaps the strongest signal of safety our own neuroception can receive.
Okay, so we've worked on the internal landscape, somatic awareness, completing impulses, self-compassion, but neuroception is constantly scanning the external world too, especially our relationships. How does relational safety fit into healing?
It's absolutely vital. We are social mammals. Our nervous systems are designed to co-regulate with others. Secure, safe relationships are like a charging station for our ventral vagal system.
And this shows up in conflict resolution too.
Definitely. Attachment theory gives us great insights here. Securely attached partners tend to handle conflict differently. They can often see through the surface-level protest behavior, the yelling, the withdrawing, the blaming.
Which is often just the defensive system kicking in.
Exactly. It's often a sign of underlying fear or unmet attachment needs. A secure partner can recognize that, stay relatively calm themselves, and focus on addressing the deeper fear or need quickly and effectively, rather than getting caught up in the escalating defense cycle.
Like the George and Kelly example from the sources. Kelly gets anxious, maybe accusatory.
Right, her defense system activates. George, being the more secure partner in this example, doesn't immediately react defensively. He doesn't escalate. He stays connected, tries to understand the fear beneath her accusation, maybe a fear of abandonment or not mattering, and reassures that fear directly.
He focuses on restoring her sense of safety, not on winning the argument.
Precisely. And that calm, responsive presence is incredibly powerful for settling her nervous system, for recalibrating her neuroception in that moment. It teaches her system implicitly that connection is safe, even during disagreement.
So in relationships, the goal during conflict isn't always necessarily to agree on everything.
Not at all. Sometimes agreement isn't possible or even necessary. The real goal, especially for long-term safety and connection, is to find ways to honor each other's deepest hopes, dreams, and vulnerabilities, even when you differ.
Honoring the core of the person.
Yes. When you can do that, when you can communicate that you respect and cherish your partner's fundamental self, even amidst disagreement, you prevent gridlock. You create an environment where both nervous systems feel fundamentally safe and respected. And that is the most powerful external signal for maintaining accurate, safety-oriented neuroception. It solidifies relational security.
Okay, so we've journeyed through the physiological healing, the somatic work, completing impulses, fostering internal and relational safety. Now, how do we connect that deep, often nonverbal internal shift back to our conscious choices and actions in daily life? This seems to be where ideas about identity change come in, like from habits theory.
This is the crucial bridge, yes. It's about integrating the new felt sense of safety into a new way of being in the world. And habits experts like James Clear point out that a really stubborn reason people fail to stick with positive changes, whether it's exercise or meditation or setting boundaries, is often because their underlying self-image, their core identity, gets in the way.
How does that work?
Well, if your neuroception have been wired for danger for years, you've likely built an identity around that. I am an anxious person. I am someone who can't cope. I am someone who isn't safe. That identity acts like a hidden thermostat, constantly pulling you back to familiar, even if painful patterns that align with that self-concept.
So trying to just be calm or be confident feels fake, dissonant with the underlying identity.
Exactly. It creates internal conflict. Real, lasting change seems to require consciously, deliberately editing those old beliefs and upgrading your identity to match the new experiences of safety you're cultivating. It's not just about doing something different. It's about becoming someone different.
Becoming someone for whom safety and regulation are the norm.
Right. You start emphasizing the new identity evidence. I am a person who noticed my breath when I felt anxious. I am a person who allowed that tremor to complete. I am a person who reached out for support. You consciously highlight these moments that align with the desired identity of being safe and capable while gradually letting the old narratives, I always panic, fade from lack of reinforcement.
So the consistent behavioral evidence, even small somatic shifts, starts to build proof for the new identity.
Exactly. And that reinforces the feeling of safety at a conscious level, which then feeds back down, helping to further solidify the recalibrated neuroception. It becomes a positive feedback loop.
You know, this internal drive for consistency, the body wanting neuroceptive congruence, the mind wanting identity congruence, it reminds me strongly of classic social psychology, specifically cognitive dissonance theory.
Ah, yes, Leon Festinger's work.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic parallel. Festinger's core idea was that we humans have this powerful innate drive for consistency. We want our beliefs, our attitudes, and our behaviors to align.
And when they don't align?
When there's inconsistency dissonance, it creates psychological discomfort, like an internal static or unease.
Yeah.
And we become highly motivated to reduce that discomfort.
So if I hold the belief smoking is terrible for my health, but I continue to smoke, behavior, I feel dissonance.
Precisely. And you'll be motivated to reduce it. How? Maybe you change the behavior, quit smoking. Or maybe you change the belief, it's not that bad, the research is flawed. Or maybe you add new beliefs to justify it. It helps me relax, which is good for my health. The brain scrambles to restore consistency.
Okay, I see the link. If I've done the somatic work and my body is starting to genuinely feel safer, but my old identity is still, I am fundamentally unsafe, that creates dissonance.
Massive dissonance.
Yeah.
And the drive will be to resolve it, ideally by updating the identity to match the new bodily reality. Okay, maybe I am capable of feeling safe sometimes. This reinforces the change.
So neuroception is like the body's physiological quest for safety consistency, and cognitive dissonance is the mind's psychological quest for belief behavior consistency.
It's a really neat parallel. Both systems are fundamentally about reducing internal conflict and seeking a state of coherence, whether it's physiological or psychological. And interestingly, Festinger also noted that one common way people reduce dissonance is by seeking social support.
How does that work?
If you've made a choice you feel slightly unsure about, like buying that expensive car, you might actively seek out friends who agree it was a great decision, or avoid friends who might criticize it. You look for external confirmation to bolster your internal consistency.
So if I'm upgrading my identity to I'm learning to feel safe, seeking out supportive relationships or groups where that identity is validated would actually help reduce dissonance and solidify the change.
Absolutely. It guides our social interactions towards those that confirm and reinforce the desired state, further strengthening both the psychological identity and the underlying neuroceptive calibration.
Tying this all back to practical steps then, it's not about expecting one huge dramatic shift overnight. It's more about the accumulation of small things.
It's totally about the accumulation. James Clear calls them atomic habits, those tiny 1% improvements, noticing one sensation for 30 seconds longer, allowing one small tremor, setting one small boundary, catching one negative self-thought, and reframing it based on the new evidence of safety.
They seem insignificant individually.
They do. In the beginning, it feels like invisible work. You don't see immediate massive results, but you keep stacking them up consistently. And eventually, the weight of this new evidence, this new pattern, starts to shift the entire system.
You reach a tipping point.
You reach a tipping point.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the new way of being, feeling regulated, responding calmly, trusting your safety cues, starts to feel easier, more natural. The upgraded identity, grounded in actual physiological and behavioral change, has taken hold. This system is now working for you, not against you. #outro.
Wow. This has been such a rich exploration today. We've really gone from the absolute deepest, most unconscious wiring in our brainstem, that neuroceptive system, all the way up to conscious identity, relationships, and daily actions.
We have. We started with neuroception, that hidden radar constantly scanning for safety or danger, and saw how elegantly Porges mapped out the body's hierarchical response system. Safety isn't just a thought. It's primarily negotiated deep within the body.
And we saw how trauma can hijack that system, locking up that vital protective energy as incomplete physiological responses, leaving us feeling suspended in fear and living these constricted lives.
But crucially, we also explored the path towards resolution. Through somatic awareness, by patiently honoring the body's rhythms and allowing those incomplete impulses to finally run their course, we can discharge that stored energy and recalibrate the system.
Which brings us to a final thought, maybe something for you, the listener, to reflect on. When you next feel that familiar automatic pull, that impulse towards fear or shutting down, or maybe lashing out that old neuroceptive alarm bell,
Can you pause just for a moment and get curious? Can you acknowledge that impulse not necessarily as an accurate reflection of present danger, but perhaps as unresolved survival energy from the past, finally seeking its completion? By meeting it with curiosity instead of immediate reaction, you might just give your body the space it needs to finally finish the action it started long ago and truly update its blueprint for safety in the world today.